Census data indicates that thousands of people own property in Florida and don't live here full time. So, what should you do if you're an out of state property owner who wants to sell your South Florida property? Let's go ahead and take a look. One thing to keep in mind if you're an out of state property owner looking to sell is that you're not alone. There are snowbirds, investors, Canadians, and international owners, as well as former residents who maybe used to live here, moved away, and have kept their property as a rental property or as a vacation home to come back to. So the point I'm trying to make is that there is a significant population who own property locally, but they don't live here full time. So what do you do in that case? The 5 biggest challenges that remote sellers face in one, property management. So while the home is on the market, it still has to be kept in show-ready condition. And when you're out of area, that can sometimes be a challenge to do. You're not there to do the little things to keep everything in order. And so you're going to need someone to take care of that for you. So if it's raining and somebody came in and somehow we got some mud in the foyer, that needs to be addressed before the next showing so that the home is always show ready and you can get the maximum response and the most optimal response from the people who are coming to see it. The second thing that you're going to need as an out of area owner is some local market knowledge, right? You want to know what pricing considerations are in play. You want to have an idea as to what the timelines are that you're looking at. Is it taking 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or 2 days to once a property goes on the market, if properly priced, for it to sell? So these are things that will help you as you're making arrangements and also help to manage your expectations in terms of how long the process should take and how smoothly you can anticipate it's going. In many cases, the third challenge that out-of-area owners have is if it comes to light that there needs to be repairs done and vendors have to be brought in to take care of that. So giving access to vendors, making sure that the property is secure before and after they leave, and just basically coordinating everything that goes with having repairs and inspections. Perhaps it's something that requires permitting, so we're going to need city inspections. Depending on the scope of the repair that is being done or the renovation that's being done, coordinating to get vendors in and out in a safe and timely way can be a third challenge. One area, fourth challenge that owners should be, out-of-state owners should be aware of is just making sure that you're looking at the tax consequences of the decision. Is this property an inherited property? Are you potentially looking at capital gains tax? Would it make sense for you to hold a property for a year and a day so that you can enjoy long-term gains, the long-term capital gains rate, which is a lot less than the short-term capital gains rate? All of these things are things that you want to consider on the front end as opposed to on the back end, because on the back end, there's very little that you can do to make a change. Whereas if you're thinking about this prospectively, you can decide when to list, when to sell, to see if that will help ultimately maximize the net proceeds that you'll walk away from, as opposed to just being locked in on the sales price. And I've done a video on that, so feel free to check that out if you have questions as it relates to that. And then last but not least is remote documentation, how to handle signings, the notarizing documents, going through the actual closing process, getting things executed as a part of the process is something that, as a remote seller, may pose somewhat of a challenge for you. So let's talk about step one, understanding the local market. That's the first thing that you want to do as an out-of-area owner. You want to understand the market. In South Florida, currently, we are facing a tale of two markets where, depending on whether you're selling a single-family home versus a condo, it could be a very different experience. So you want to be aware of what the conditions are relative to the type of property that you're looking to sell. You also want to understand what's happening as it relates to the age of your property and insurance. A big concern for us right now in our local market is making sure that the property is insurable, because a lot of buyers are having challenges with properties with maybe older roofs or the wrong wiring. They're having some challenges getting insurance. If you are getting a loan and you can't get insurance, the loan is not going to be approved and or funded. And so that can become a significant sticking point as it relates to getting the property sold, whether you're out of state or resident in the state. You also want to look at the HOA, your association's financial health. Again, the tale of two markets. Typically, the homeowners associations, that has less of an impact than on the condo associations. But in any event, you want to make sure that you're looking at both, at whatever the association is, to have an understanding of any potential pitfalls or any challenges that could arise based on things that are happening in the association, because whatever is going on will be discovered by the buyer as they go through their financing process, and better to try to fix it on the front end than wait until you're in a transaction to try to get that resolved. And then last but not least, you want to be aware of local inventory levels. If we have a lot of condos on the market and they're taking 11 months to sell, it's not realistic for you to expect that yours is going to sell in 30 days unless you're prepared to give a significant discount on the price to make it a lot more attractive to a potential buyer. So these are all things that you want to do as the first step of your process of getting ready to list and sell your property when you are an out-of-state owner. The second thing that you want to do is you want to prepare the property. I strongly recommend having an inspection done, a pre-listing inspection, so that we can identify what the challenges are. We'll know what the remaining useful life is on the roof per the inspector's estimate, and just identify whatever challenges are potentially out there as it relates to the property ahead of getting that information from the buyer's inspector. You want to make sure that you have a full knowledge and that you can factor in what it's going to cost to correct those issues, to mitigate those problems ahead of getting an offer and try to negotiate the terms with the buyer. You have a lot more autonomy and a lot more ability to come up with something that is favorable to you if we do this on the front end, as opposed to waiting to do it on the back end. Again, we talked about the tax implications of capital gains, knowing what that looks like. Potentially, if you're in a state that has state income taxes, you want to be familiar with what those requirements are. Thankfully, Florida is not a state that has state income tax, so you just have to focus on the federal requirements. If you are an international seller, you want to be aware of FERPTA, which is a requirement that 15% of the proceeds be withheld if you are selling as a foreigner. There are some exclusions, there are some carve-outs, but so you want to find out what those are so that, if possible, you can take advantage of those, as opposed to ending up having to have withholding and ultimately pay taxes on the sale of your property simply because you are an international seller. Step 4 is working through this remote selling logistics. The good news is that technology has made this a lot easier. We have things like e-signatures. Everybody practically has email. So getting the documents over to you is not a problem. E-signatures allowing you to sign electronically. We now have capability for remote notarization, so that can be done. There's several providers that would offer that. And we can have virtual inspections where you can walk through the property virtually, and we also have the capability to provide digital showings. So all of these help make the property more accessible, streamline the process, but still arrangements have to be made to put things in place. We're not seeing as many digital showings now. That was more of a product of the COVID era. Now that we're on the other side of that, most people want to come in and see the property in person. But again, coordinating that with your agent will take the pressure off of you as an out-of-area seller We just have to coordinate getting access to the property. And step 5 is obviously managing showings and offers. Vacant homes are going to require oversight. We've had incidents of squatters trying to move into vacant properties. You want to make sure that your property is protected and that the right agent is there. We recommend doing at least a weekly drive-by of the property to make sure, especially if it's vacant, that it's still vacant and the property is not in harm's way. Nothing untoward is going on as it relates to that property in that location. Here are 4 common mistakes that I see sellers making all the time that actually end up costing them thousands of dollars. That it just has them leaving money on the table. And the first thing is using Zillow for pricing or any other platform. These platforms can give you a range to expect based on what is happening in the market, but nothing compares to going into your property and seeing exactly what condition it's in, what upgrades have been done, how does it show, how does it smell, how bright is it, how much light is in there. All of these things factor into creating an experience that a buyer will pay to come in and call home. So while Zillow or any of the other portals can give you a range of values, it's very difficult without having someone, a professional, going in and seeing the property to be able to adjust for any deficiencies as well as any upgrades to the property that will ultimately refine that value number. So that's something that I see a lot of times. Sellers will ask for a Z estimate and they think that is a final number. That is the beginning of the calculation. That's the beginning of the assessment. It's certainly not the end. Another big mistake that we see many sellers making is they ignore the HOA and they don't ask about special assessments. They don't ask about delinquent dues. Your association can foreclose on your property for unpaid dues. So it's really important to make sure that you are on top of the association situation. If there's any delinquency or anything like that, you don't want to lose your property for unpaid HOA or condo dues. So don't ignore the association. Make sure that you reach out and that you get accurate information as to what the balance is and where the unit is, where the property is in relation to the association, so that there are no surprises. Another mistake that I see sellers making is they delay doing the repairs. They want to sell as is. In many cases, selling as is a solid strategy for selling your home, but there's some repairs that actually need to be done to make sure that the property is insurable and financeable. We typically call those lender required repairs. And there are other repairs that for a small amount yield a big return on investment because it improves curb appeal for the property. Again, don't delay making repairs. Don't be fast to say, okay, I want to sell as is. If spending $5,000 will get you $20,000 back, that's something that maybe you want to consider and see how you can get that $5,000 repair done to yield that big return on investment as it relates to offer price. And then last but not least is they skip tax planning because they wait until the deal is done. And when we're starting to see the final numbers, that's when they're starting to think about taxes and tax planning. Once you're at that stage, it's too late to do anything. You owe what you owe. The transaction has taken place. And so there's not a lot that can be done to mitigate or to help that particular situation. So you want to make sure that you address that as early as possible. So if you're trying to figure out whether or not you're ready to sell as an out-of-state owner, please feel free to reach out to me and let's build your strategy. You can schedule a free remote seller strategy session with me by going to my website, simplyaskSharon.com, and selecting an appointment that is convenient for you. We will get together for about 15 minutes. We'll look at market conditions. I'll share with you what's happening in the local market. And then we'll talk about estimating what your net proceeds would be under this current market and based on the information that you've given me. We'll also look at timing. In some instances, it may be worth it to wait a little bit longer before putting the property on the market if it could result in a favorable tax treatment or improve market conditions that will help you to get a better price. So all of those will be covered with you in our complimentary seller strategy session. And that way you'll have the information that you need to make the best possible decision. I hope you found the information here helpful. If you did, please remember to like the video and also to subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified when new videos are posted. I want to thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope that this was helpful, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.